Welcome back to ATL Day Ones. Once again, I am Tanitra. This is my girl Maria, and we are grateful that you guys are rocking with us once again. Of course, Jarvis is out on vacation, enjoying his best life for his birthday. He'll be back next week. But in the meantime, in between time, Maria and I got you covered with all things Atlanta sports. So again, thank you guys for rocking with us on YouTube, getting close to 2,000 subscribers for this Locked On Sports Atlanta network. And also, thank you guys so much for continuing to support us on various audio platforms wherever you download your podcast. Keep giving us 5-star reviews because when we bring you amazing guest hosts like Maria, why wouldn't you give us 5 stars? Just saying. And we hope that after Thursday night, we're giving 5-star reviews to the Atlanta Hawks for having a solid draft. And we hope as we continue in this churn of NBA free agency, better known as the drama factory. But when we continue to churn in NBA free agency, also look to give them 5 stars or an A as well. But real talk, Maria, we're right on the doorstep of this NBA draft, maybe one of the most important off seasons for the Hawks, at least in recent memory, right? So we learned last week that they promoted Landry Fields into the GM position. And although it'll take effect officially July 1st, he's operating in that right now, gearing up for Thursday. So he's talked about a couple things recently, right? In meeting with our local media, you and I and other members of our local media about the draft being one where the Hawks would probably go with their typical standard kind of approach of best player available, but also acknowledging the fact that there's a key need on defense. I mean, we all know it, especially on the wing, but also wanting to be mindful of appreciating and recognizing the need for someone who can come in and just build on the chemistry of where the Hawks are, putting all of those things together to make sure they get the proper run in the Eastern Conference like we saw last season. That said, how important is this, not just for the Hawks, to get this draft right, to get this free agency period right for the future of this franchise as the Eastern Conference continues to ramp up for those top tier teams? How important is it for the Hawks and Landry Fields to get this right?
I think that this is one of the more important drafts that they've ever had. And mostly because when you saw the Eastern Conference Finals run a year ago, and then they really made virtually no changes throughout their roster in the following year, multiple people admitted that maybe they shouldn't have done that. So I think in order to make changes, you have to actually make change, and that starts with the draft. It's funny because he did say that the Hawks typically go best available, and yes, in the past they have. I don't believe that he even believes that they're going to do that. I think we're going to see a lot of drama on Thursday night from the Hawks because they need to make a splash and they need to make something happen. You and I have talked about it. They're about a couple guys away from me taking them seriously as a team and as a franchise. And in order to do that, you got to trade. You got to make sure that you get guys in here who can actually facilitate and make sure they make an immediate impact on the court, because right now they're just hoping that the guys that they have on this roster can kind of grow, and it hasn't necessarily happened. Either guys have been getting hurt or they really haven't made the progress like DeAndre Hunter, like they thought that he could. We saw flashes of that against the Heat for DeAndre, but really if you put it on a whole platter in his career, what he's had so far, he hasn't really panned out to be everything that they thought that he would. He's just one of the examples. The Hawks need so many things, and in order to do that, they're going to have to make a big splash on Thursday. I expect to be very busy on Thursday night. I've seen so many rumors between John Collins, Kevin Huerter, a bunch of names out there. I think we're going to see a big trade from the Hawks. I would seriously be shocked if they pick at 16.
Agreed. And it's interesting because one of the things that I saw, one of the rumors, because like you said, so many rumors out there right now, is them moving up in the draft. And the first thing I said, Maria had kind of a Tanitra meltdown, which is not really a meltdown. It's more of like a side eye. But I was like, no, don't do it. Unless you're going to move up to go to, say, 7 or somewhere in the lottery for the purposes of leverage. Because certainly I don't think this draft is one where there are any outstanding players, especially either one of the two spaces where most people agree, depending on what camp you're in, because it seems like there are 3 camps with the Hawks, right? It seems like there's the camp that says, hey, we need a backup to Trae / 2 who can really move well with or without the ball, right? And give some more defense for the backcourt. And then you've got that other group that says, hey, we need that swing guy. We really saw the Hawks struggle with defending on the perimeter. So you've got to get that guy who can do that and still be comfortable handling the ball. And then you do have a few people who are in that mindset that you need a kind of a different 5, if you will. So depending on where you are, but real talk, this draft probably is one where you go out and either get a guard, or get a swing. There's really no different, there's no middle ground there. But I agree with you. I think that you can say until you're blue in the face that it's going to be about best player available. I don't think that's the case. I think you're going to go after need, because how do you not, even if you go after a guard, for example, how do you not go after a two-way player? I mean, that's going to be critical, if you will. And you go back to something you mentioned about the Eastern Conference and particularly the Miami Heat. But it
Yeah.
was really easy for them. They just said, hey, we're going to shut down Trae Young, and then we're going to make this entire team beat us. And we're going to go to the wing, and we're just going to drive and kick, drive and kick, drive and kick. So everybody figured out the formula, but Miami perfected the formula, and that's why we saw that kind of go the way of the way of the water buffalo. Flip side, you look over in the Western Conference and you look at the Warriors and kind of key pieces that stepped up to the plate and were able to either give you two-way play or give you defense when you needed it. So I think to say that it's going to be another best available, I kind of think that's kind of playing a little bit cat and mouse. I think it's really going to have to be about need, and that's going to be defense. Other thing you mentioned that I wanted to kind of piggyback on in agreement with you is it's the movement that's going to take place in the next 48 hours that's going to be a trickle down effect of what we see Thursday. So all of those names that have been bantered, right? Everyone from a DeAndre Ayton to a Donovan Mitchell, Zach LaVine, and all points in between. I think now the Hawks have said, as you mentioned, they've acknowledged, whether that be from Travis Schlenk or Tony Ressler, that, hey, we need to be aggressive, and we're not going to be concerned about a luxury tax. We're going to be concerned about going after the best players that will come here. Atlanta's finally in a point in place where they can attract big name free agents. And I think they have to do everything that they can do. And if your name is not Trae Young, there has to be a willingness to part ways, maybe with the exception of like a few folks, because you mentioned earlier someone like an Onyeka Okongwu, right? That might be your one young that maybe you hold on to. But I agree with you. Got to be open and willing to do just about everything, because you saw what standing pat last preseason, not just at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
It's standing pat last off season that brought you to the point of the early exit out of this round of the postseason.
Yeah, and we're talking so much about defense. That's got to be such a huge emphasis, because when you go back to the series against the Miami Heat, really they exposed every single weakness on the court for the Hawks, and they did it so well. They took every single facet of their game away, and you talked about their struggles along the perimeter. You saw what Miami was able to do, and this wasn't even a really good Miami team in comparison to theirs in the years past. So I think that really exposed where the Hawks were at this point in time, and it also made people realize that Eastern Conference Finals run was so special. And it was almost like a Cinderella run when you really compare it to this year, because virtually nothing changed, like we talked about. And you and I have talked, not on here, but off to the side, about how they do have to make changes in order to make the next step in this franchise. Trae Young needs help. Trae Young's defense isn't getting any better. You've got to figure it out, and you have to make sure that these guys can be competitive defensively. And the only way that you do that is you get someone in who has maybe an established tenure already in the NBA. So we're talking about a trade. I think that that's maybe where they're going to look for. And talk about this draft not being necessarily one where there's a lot of impact players. I don't believe so either, especially when you get outside of the lottery. They're lucky that a guy like Kevin Huerter was drafted later in the first round, and he's been able to be what he has been in the NBA so far. That doesn't happen a lot of the times in the first round in the NBA. So I think in order for it to be worth it for the Hawks, they got to move up, and move up very far, which means giving away a lot of pieces. So if you're a Hawks fan, please understand this is going to be a different looking team, I personally think, on Thursday.
Yeah, and I'm here for it. I am definitely here for it. And as long as you and I have covered that team, we definitely have established some positive relationships with many of those players. So from a heart perspective, it'll be tough to see some of them part ways. But from a head perspective, you've got to do what's right, as the Eastern Conference is going to continue to ramp up all those teams that are, especially in that top four. You know, when you talk about the Heat or the Bucks, for example, those teams are going to keep ramping up, and then you've got to take advantage of teams that may be deconstructed potentially, like a Sixers team. You've got to take advantage, and you've got to move yourself up. And finally, there's something you said that I wanted to just co-sign on before we wrap up, and that is, at the end of the day, if you really want this team to take a next step, you've got to get some veteran presence there, because we know the fall off when Vince Carter left, in terms of not just what he brought on the court, but off the court. We're probably going to see Lou Williams announce a retirement. I'd be shocked if you saw him in a Hawks uniform again or in NBA uniform, period. So, yeah, I think you've got to go out there aggressively to get veterans because you need that presence to also help this team to get over the hump and get back to the top of the heap for Eastern Conference. So, thank you guys again for rocking with us. We appreciate you. And you know that Maria and I will be watching and reacting to everything that happens in the next 48 hours when it comes not only to the Hawks, but to this NBA draft. And like we said, when we come back, it'll be sports, entertainment, and the intersection of those two is for the culture right here on ATL Day Ones.